Do you want a financially secure future, not just for yourself, but for your loved ones as well? This is Generations of Wealth, the podcast that breaks down the most effective wealth building strategies you can easily apply to your own life. Join investor and international best-selling author Derek Dombeck in exploring practical tips and sound advice on building a profitable business, creating a powerful brand, or getting into the thriving world of real estate investing. This is your chance to create your very own financial roadmap to live your vision, love your life. Let's begin this discussion with your host, Derek Dombeck.
Welcome to the Generations of Wealth podcast. I'm Derek Dombeck, your host, where we live our visions and love our lives. Today, I've got Chris Miles. Chris, I appreciate you being on. You're considered the cash flow expert and kind of the anti-financial advisor. I got to know what that's all about. But why don't you just give us a little background, tell us who you are, and we'll just dive into it.
Well, yeah, like you mentioned, I'm kind of the anti-financial advisor because I think financial advisors suck, for that to be brutally honest, right? Again, good-hearted people for the most part, but just been deceived because, just like the pharmaceutical industry, right? And how they screw up health. It's the same thing in the financial industry, right? They just sell you a bunch of crap that really doesn't help out, which is why we're doing real estate investing, because we know that works where it's not the case. And I first learned that actually, I went to college, because, your mom goes to college, I went to college course because I wanted to, do something different with my life than my parents did. Because my dad, he worked hard, for example. I mean, he was in the automotive industry and he worked his butt off. But he would tell me all the time, he's like, man, Chris, work's going to kill me. I'm going to die working. Right. And he even said things, of course, like, we can't afford this. What do you think I am, made of money? Money doesn't grow in trees, all that kind of stuff that you hear growing up, maybe like you have too. And
oh yeah.
But I was like, I don't want that life. I want something more. So when I was in college, I realized I should probably be in the entrepreneur space because that was the people I noticed that made the most money, had the most time freedom, financial freedom in general. And so I wanted that. And so I actually dropped out of college with one class to go, went and tried to find some business to start. And the first one that came up was being a financial advisor, not knowing they take anybody off the street as long as you can pass a test and not have a criminal record, right? And so that's the path I took. And I actually liked it. I liked learning about money and different stuff because I didn't really know much other than save everything. My dad was like Dave Ramsey's older brother, right? He was just like, spend nothing, save everything, just be cheap and live a crappy life, that way. And so that's kind of what I had been modeled, which of course fits great as a financial advisors because they teach you to live on rice and beans too, right? They tell you to basically stock all your money in their crap versus making money elsewhere. And I remember it became very apparent to me when I first sat down with my dad because he asked me after I was in the business for 4 years, he said, Chris, when are you going to advise me? So I sat down with him, first time ever. We're looking at all of his finances. And by the way, it's the first time ever because he never liked to show his money. Like he was very guarded. He thought everybody was trying to take whatever money he had. So he's in that scarcity mindset. And then as I sit down with him, he says, Chris, all right, I'm 61 years old. I want to retire now. How can I do it? I see that he's paid off his house. He's totally debt-free. He paid it off in 18 years. He'd been stuffing money in his 401k for decades. And after I seen that, I said, Dad, here's the deal. If you want to retire today, you better hope you die in 5 years because that's when you're going to run out of money. All right, well, what do I do then? I don't know because you did everything right from what I taught as a financial advisor. And that bugged me because I couldn't tell him to just go into whatever I was going to sell him because what if the market tanked, which by the way, a few years later it did. So the Great Recession happened after I met with him here. So I was glad I didn't tell him to go into other stock market stuff, but I really didn't have an answer for him. And of course, when the student's ready, the teacher appears. One of the guys I trained to be a financial advisor left to go do real estate investing. He became a flipper, right? And so I call him up thinking he's probably broke, chasing dreams and not making any money in real estate. He's going to come back and work for me. But instead, he tells me the opposite. He says, Chris, man, life is amazing. He's like, my dad and I have partnered on some deals, and we've now doubled his income as a professor at that local university. So where my dad basically has no hope of retirement, his dad's already doubled his income in a matter of months doing real estate. And I'm like, come on, that's too good to be true. There's no way that's possible. He finally just said, Chris, let me ask you this. How many of your clients are actually financially free where they don't worry about money? Well, none. They all worry about running out of money. Well, great. Good job, Chris. Way to help no one. Well, how about this? How many of you guys as financial advisors are financially free, not off the commissions you're earning, but actually doing these same mutual fund investments? And I was really honest with myself, and there was over 100 guys in our office. I said, none, probably none of them. Even guys have been working there since the late 1970s won't retire. He said, there's your problem. And that kind of got me down, taking the matrix red pill, right? I went down this whole other rabbit hole and realized that it wasn't about how much you accumulate to then live on less than the interest like they teach you as a financial advisor. It's about what kind of income gets generated from the cash that you have. That passive income, right? That we always talk about, but how do you actually do it? And when I started learning to think, you do things like, hard money lending. You could lend your money to investors and then they pay you. You can go and invest in deals. You could get rentals. You could do this and that and all the other. I was like, holy cow, my mind's blown, because now someone with $100,000 who hopes to live on $3,000 a year, because financial advisors say don't pull out more than 3% a year. Instead of $100,000, even if you make 1% a month, is still $1,000 a month, right? That's way better than $3,000 a year, and that you then pay taxes on anyways. And so at that point, I couldn't make the two worlds work, and I quit being a financial advisor, vowed never to do it again. I was like, I'll never teach about money. I'll just, be a mortgage broker, do a little bit of real estate on the side, and teach ballroom dancing. And that was kind of the path I was on until, of course, later that next year, I was able to retire myself at 28 years old. And then people always want to know, how did you do it? And so in 2007, I actually came out of retirement, teach people how to do what I've done, which is how do you get to the place where you're work optional? You work because you want to, but not because you have to, right? That's the big key thing. And obviously real estate's a big key in that.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. And the first thing I got to tell you is when I didn't go to college. I came out of high school. I went into an apprenticeship program and got into the construction trades. And
Nice.
at one point, my wife was asked to, have somebody come over, a financial advisor, sit down with us. They were trying to recruit her, and they ultimately didn't recruit her. They recruited me. And it was, so I had a period of time in my mid-20s where I was doing the same thing. And that was the first time I had any financial education. And shortly thereafter, I would say a year and a half, maybe 2 years of doing that, I got really sick of sitting down with families, handing them a viable plan to at least make their life better, but they didn't want to make their life better. They'd say, yeah, this sounds great, Derek, except we don't want to make those sacrifices. And that was my transition into real estate, because I knew what I could do with my construction background. I knew what I could do financially now because I had a financial education. So even though I agree with you, financial advisors, the masses of them, I'm anti for sure. I wouldn't probably have made the steps that I made if I hadn't had that couple of years. But my biggest pet peeve is that if a financial advisor won't show me their net worth, then how do I know they should be advising me on my net worth? And none of them will ever show you their financials. So
and
what
even
does
if
that
they
tell
do,
you?
can you trust it? Right.
No.
And I don't mean that they're lying, but here's what I found out. Financial advisors are not financially successful because of their investing. Financial advisors are financially successful because they're good salespeople. Right. That's what I've noticed. And that's why when my friend, because he went in the business for about a year with me, I was in there for 4 years. And so when he got in, like, he kind of saw the inner workings of it. And of course it helped too, that he was starting to listen to other real estate investors that were kind of saying, here, wake up, that's not where the money is. And that's what I realized too, when he really asked me that question. How many of you guys as financial advisors are financially free if you took those commissions away, right? That's the
Absolutely.
key. If you take away because a lot of them get paid assets under management, right? Which means how much, if you invest $1 million with them, say they only pull off 1%, some charge more, but a 1% fee, they're getting paid $10,000 a year, whether you make money or not. They're always making money regardless of your performance. And that's the one thing I think is kind of unethical, right? Again, these guys, I know, and too, they really want to help people for the most part. But the problem is you're working for financial companies that aren't incentivizing you to be successful. They're incentivizing them to just get more money under management, tell you to take high risks while they take no risks by charging you guaranteed fees. But you're supposed to take all those risks in the stock market, which is like a bipolar ex-girlfriend. You never want to have that. So, it's just ridiculous. And here's the thing, is like, I like evidence. That's the one reason why I stopped going to college, because I realized that with evidence, if you don't have real life business experience, you're not going to make a lot of money in business. So what was the whole purpose of a college degree if people can walk away and not really be able to make money in business? Well, same thing with the financial advising aspect, is I realized, like, wait a minute, like, this should work. But look at Fidelity. Like, I just looked at the numbers last year in 2023. Fidelity, they've got 45 million clients in America. That's a huge portion of Americans that have 401ks and IRAs with Fidelity, right? That's the largest one. Well, guess what? Of those 45 million, only 750,000 have at least $1 million saved up. I know there's more than 750,000 baby boomers that are investing with Fidelity. Easily, probably based on just demographics and amount of money and things like that, it's probably into the easily 10 million plus that are baby boomers here. Yet only 750,000 have at least $1 million saved up. And you got guys like Dave Ramsey out there saying, well, if you just save $100 a month for 40 years, making 12%, you'll have $1 million. Well, it's not happening.
And where does
they're not making 12%?
Where does the average person get 12% from?
Yeah, they don't.
No,
they never have.
No.
But again, that's the whole actual versus average returns. I learned that as a financial advisor late, which is kind of what got me to question some of the things I was teaching, where the actual return is closer to about 8%, not 12, and even people argue with me on, YouTube and stuff. They'll say, oh, Chris, but you reinvest those dividends, you make more. Yeah, guess what? It's only like 9.5%. And that's if you happen to get the stock market returns, which most people don't even get that high.
And you still
401ks, here to go with on Fidelity, by the way, 401ks, the target date retirement funds average over 2% less than the stock market. Plus they have a 0.75% fee. So you're making about 3% less. So even when you get the match barely offsets the bad performance. And here's another thing too. Of those people that had over $1 million, Transamerica did another study. They found out that of those people surveyed, 35% said it would, quote, take a miracle for them to be able to retire. So even though only 1.5% even got $1 million in Fidelity's funds, still over a third of those said it would take a miracle to be able to retire, which means there's less than a 1% success rate for getting over $1 million and feeling free. Think about that. That's like going on Google, seeing a restaurant that you're debating about going to eat at. There's 99 negative reviews with a 1 star and then that 1 5-star, and you think, oh yeah, that's got to be good. That's what you're doing in the financial advisor world.
Absolutely. And the other side of that coin is, as I started mentioning, where does the average person get 12% or even 8 or 9% for reinvesting their dividends? They don't know that information. And it's not that it's not accessible to them. The average American just chooses not to try and learn how to do that. So for you, I mean, you said you retired once, you came out of retirement. I know you're very pro passive income, and you do talk about how everybody needs some passive income versus transactional income. How do you define that? What's the difference to you?
Yeah, transactional income is income that you're earning through work, through your business, including if you're a wholesaler or flipper or whatever you're doing. That's active income, right? And active income is awesome. So don't think I'm trash talking active income, because that's the very economic engine you should have. That is your number one investment to start helping you to then have profits to then generate passive income. Passive income is money that you're not working for, right? That could be like, for example, when I buy rentals now before the last recession, I try to manage my own rentals, and I sucked as a property manager, right? I'm not saying you do, but I did, because I was the kind of guy that would take on whatever sob story I heard. And then next thing you know, they're 3 months late on their rent. I'm just a pushover that way. And so, but when I buy turnkey properties where somebody else manages the property, a property management company does it for me, that for me is way more passive. Now there's still stuff that can happen, but at least now I'm not getting bugged for every little, whatever tenant, toilet, or trash issue that comes up, right? So, and that's probably the least passive thing I do. Other things like I've mentioned hard money. I'll lend out money to people for hard money deals all the time. There's even times where I'll do things like syndications, although I'm staying away from like big commercial multifamily lately, especially because cap rates stink right now. But 6 months to a year, they might be back, right? Same thing with self-storage. I think that's awesome in business, but it's really hard to find decent deals in that space. So I'm doing a lot more on the lending space or lending funds where they'll get paid 10 to 12%. But again, hands off, they're doing all the work. I'm not, right? I even have a partnership with Raw Land right now where they're doing all the transactions. I'm a 70% partner for financing it. And I actually just updated it and saw that my passive income from 350,000 invested is now over 9,500 a month, so that's the kind of stuff I love. That's the fun stuff, is being more hands off. Again, like active now, what I do, even though I don't need to anymore, is because I'm so passionate about getting people liberated, and even people in the real estate space need to be liberated to some level because man, 2022, 2023, it made it pretty apparent you need multiple streams of income, right? Because if you're just relying on one source of lead gen or whatever it might be in your business, man, you can get screwed big time. And I've had several friends even go out of business, had to completely change careers or pivot their business, do a total 180, lay off 3/4 of their staff just so that they could stay afloat, and it's rough. Those times can happen. But when you got other streams of income coming in, especially passive streams, because you took some of your profits, you didn't just reinvest everything in their business, which means you have no profit. You're just spending more money in the business to generate more revenue. Instead of always doing that, take some of that money out and create some security for your family too.
Man, I want to dive into that because I get this conversation started with people that have been in the business for the last 5 years or less. And let's even say 7 years or less. And they built these big wholesaling machines, or they built these, these large companies and had no clue to set anything aside. They thought the music would never stop. There would always be enough chairs for everybody. Now, I started in 2003, built up, lost damn near everything in the crash, had to reinvent myself, start over. A lot of people that listen to my show know my story. I want to hear from you, not specifically about your friends that had to pivot but just the industry. What have you seen in the last few years? And I say this openly, like, I love the fact that we're weeding out some of these people and some of these weak realtors, some of these, there's a reason there's market cycles, and those of us that are prepared for it, we accelerate while everyone else is decelerating or hitting the brakes. So what's your viewpoint on that?
I totally agree. I mean, it is sad to watch, people, really deal with that kind of thing. But just like you had mentioned, right. And I've gone through too, like the last recession kicked my butt where I was trying to flip and do stuff, and that just went south. I nearly went bankrupt. I went over $1 million in debt during that time. But the things that I learned coming out of that, the resources and tools, there's no amount of money I could have paid. I could not have joined a mastermind group to learn that. I could not have, read a book or watched YouTube videos to figure out how that really worked. Like, I had to go through it myself, and it creates this almost this personal intestinal fortitude, right? You just get this grit and wisdom that comes from that kind of thing. And so, although I don't welcome it, I know it has to happen. And you're right, industry wide, you gotta get rid of the posers, right? I mean, there have been so many posers out there. I mean, for example, like we have like two arms of our business. We have like an infinite banking arm, and then we've got an arm where we do consulting, helping people create passive income. And so people will hire us to try to connect them to deals. We don't raise funds. We don't do anything investing wise that way, but we connect them to people that have deals. I can't tell you how many times, especially like 2020, 2021, I had people who are like, yeah, I've been investing since 2019. Why don't you send your clients my way? I was like, why don't you get another decade under your belt first, get a full market cycle? Why don't you go through some hard times first, and then let's talk, right? And they didn't like that. And it's hard because some of them were friends too. I'm like, no, it's just the honest truth. Like, you got to get your teeth kicked in a little bit and get some wisdom in your business to make sure that your model works in any economic cycle. If you can do that, then you're onto something. And man, that's a saving grace. And I learned that from the last recession, because there's people that had been great in real estate through the 2000s, but then when 2008 started hitting, even 2007 for the flippers, but 2007, 2008 started happening, man, so many people went out of business. Some people are going out and get full-time jobs again.
Absolutely. And honestly, that was for me the turning point in my career. It was either quit or figure out a new way. And that's when I reinvented myself. I figured out how to actually negotiate, talk to people, stop relying on the realtors, the bankers, all the institutions,
Mm-hmm.
and rely on the person I knew I could rely on, which was myself.
That's
And
right.
and now, so I had a hard money lending company that my business partner and I established for the last 10 years. Recently, he bought me out of that, and so I can grow generations of wealth. And honestly, I'm in full acquisition mode again because
Mm-hmm.
I love the market we're in right now. I was so excited when
Yeah.
interest rates started going up
Mm-hmm.
because there's opportunity. And for me, when I started, interest rates were, 8-9% was pretty typical back in the early 2000s.
That's right.
So it's not that you can't make money. It's just a different way.
Yeah.
So,
That's so
um,
true. That's one thing I've learned too, is that, the best time to buy is when nobody wants to buy, right?
mhm,
Like even lately, I've been telling my clients, I'm like, guys, if you're going to be buying rentals, now's the time because interest rates have dropped. 5 million more people are now qualified to be able to buy a home that couldn't do it last fall, will be able to do it come springtime, as long as the rates don't skyrocket up again, which they could. But if
mhm.
they stay down even where they are right now, that's 5 million people that have been delaying trying to buy a home that can now buy it. I was like, this is a great time to get in because everybody's telling you real estate's going to fail. When the media is telling you something, do the opposite, right? When your brother-in-law or that person down the street, your neighbor says, "Oh yeah, I heard this," then do the opposite of that. If everybody's saying, "Oh, Bitcoin's the thing to buy
Absolutely.
now," don't you dare buy Bitcoin. If they say the stock market's the thing to buy now, don't get in the stock market. Which, by the way, I think that's a pretty wise move too. So you just got to be listening, and when there's blood in the streets, that's the time to get greedy.
Well, and for me, the sellers, I mean, I'm a real estate transaction engineer, right? I go and solve
Mhm.
real estate problems. And the last few months, I mean, I've bought properties. I bought 3 properties from one seller. He took zero down, carrying 0% financing for 10 years.
Yeah.
And he's tickled to death because this is the first time in 7 years that he's actually made money each month
Mhm.
because of decisions that he made. And I turned around and I sold all 3 of those properties to other local investors, and I'm carrying the paper for them at cheaper than what they can get at the bank. And it's an
Yeah,
arbitrage play, and I love it.
totally.
I've got those opportunities. I've always been able to do that throughout any market, but it's scaling up now because of the shift. So
Yeah.
that's
It's true. I,
fantastic.
I recently had Pace Morby on my podcast, and same thing. Like he's been riding that wave, riding that horse so
Mhm.
long right now because of that very reason, right? And it's not saying it's going to work forever, but that's the thing is like what you've learned, right? Over time, as you start to learn, there's different strategies for different markets. Even Ron LeGrand, I know he's like the OG in the space, and
Yep.
he was telling me that the other day too. He's like, there's always something you can do in any market cycle. You just have to know which part of the cycle you're in and then switch. You just got to pivot and move, and you can make it work in any cycle that you're in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, you had mentioned something in passing. The other side of your business is infinite banking. And there's good, bad. I've actually, interviewed other people about infinite banking. What's your take on it?
Yeah, you get guys out there like Dave Ramsey, especially Susie Orman. I mean, they're getting asked more and more questions about it all the time, and they hate it and they'll trash it. And my response is, for the most part, they're right. It's with the way that most of those insurance agents set them up, they suck. Okay. And the reason I know that is because when I left being a financial advisor and I started in this real estate space in 2006, I remember a lot of people saying, "Oh, you got to do infinite banking. It's awesome." I'm like, I've never heard this strategy before. I was a financial advisor for 4 years, never heard of it.
Hmm.
Oh, read this book by Nelson Nash. It's great. And they're like, okay, cool. I can buy a car or a house with it. Sure, whatever. I go to sit down with the guy that does it. Now, remember, I was insurance license still for 4 years up to that point. Never heard of it before. He's teaching to me, saying he's using this tool using whole life insurance, which I used to tell people was a ripoff, right?
Me
Now,
too.
granted,
Yep.
yeah, and now granted, I never knew if it was a ripoff because I just repeated what other financial advisors told me, right? I don't know if that was the same for you, but
Yep.
that's what they trained me to say. It was whole life sucks. You don't make any money in them. So of course I'm shocked when I hear from those real estate investors, it's the best thing since sliced bread when they do real estate. Well, I remember when the guy set it up for me and the insurance agent, and he said, and I remember asking him, I said, "Hey, I know there's ways I can manipulate some of the things on my numbers with insurance, other insurance products. Can I do that here with whole life?" He said, "No, no, you cannot do anything different than what it is." I was like, man, that kind of sucks. Like for 2 years, I have no cash in here. Okay, whatever. I'll trust you because everybody else does. I'll do it. Well, that was 2006. 2008 rolls around. My cash flow is suffering. I'm in the hole 15,000 a month. There's no way I can pay my insurance premiums. I paid 25 grand into those insurance policies. And guess how much cash I had? A couple $100.
Yeah.
So when I couldn't pay the premiums anymore, I lost them. They were the most expensive term insurance in a sense, right?
Yeah.
That I could have bought because I lost all those policies. All the cash I paid in showed nothing to show for it. Guess what? A few months later, as I'm starting to do my own research and do my own stuff, own numbers, I find out that guy lied to me because I could have designed it in a way where I had cash in there from day one, not waiting for a few years because it's front loaded on the cost there, right?
Right.
Well, I confronted him about it. We had a 2-hour debate. It got pretty heated to the point where the assistants out in the hallway could hear us, hear me yelling at him. Finally, after 2 hours, he finally just said, Chris, I designed it that way because I couldn't afford to cut my commissions. And I said, there's the truth, and I'm never going to send you a person again. And it kind of became my mission over the next really 15 years to kind of find ways to do it better and better, more for myself as an investor, but even just for other people too, because I was so pissed that that was so prevalent and that, that it's just been taught out there. And there's a lot of great people teaching infinite banking right now. So don't get me wrong. There's guys that do a good job, but they don't do the best for their clients. For example, there's a guy that's very popular in infinite banking space. I won't say his name, but he's bigger on YouTube than even I am in this space. And one of my friends who's an investor, he sent his brother over to him, and I told the guy, I said, listen, I think you're overpaying. If you use these guys' people, guarantee you're going to overpay. Come back that the guy was putting in 10,000 a year, he was overpaying by about $1,000 a year. So you do the math. I mean, this guy is like overpaying a lot. For something that always literally like almost a click of the button and a few little adjustments could have saved him at that $1,000 a year. But guess where that extra $1,000 a year would have gone if he didn't go with us instead? It would have just gone to pad the insurance agent's pocket because that's how they make money. They're not investors. They don't give a crap about your real estate investing. They even if they know real estate investors and they might even have a couple properties themselves, maybe for the most part, they're just trying to sell you a bill of goods. And so you got to watch out because I believe that it's not about the death benefit. I mean, even though that's great, it's a bonus. It's about that cash value. And most importantly, the reason I use it is one, it is a safe place to store my money because if anybody wants to sue me, if creditors come after me, they cannot get to this money. That's the number one reason why most of the real estate investors that we work with, that's why they're like, no, I want just for that reason alone, because I keep it in the bank. It's free game for anybody to take.
Is that state specific or is that federal? As far as
state specific, it's most states. There's a few states like California, they'll only protect a limited amount, but even then, there's still ways to work around it.
Chris, are you trying to tell me that California has rules that are different than everyone else that's normal? I mean, everyone else?
Yeah, liberals don't want you to be wealthy. That's the thing, right? And I'm again, I have a lot of liberal friends. I used to be one myself, but yeah, when it comes to this, when you get states like California where they're almost like Canada up down there, I mean, they can kind of screw you over sometimes when you're trying to make money, right? So that's why everybody's leaving California. But no, you're right. Like it is state specific. So depending on the state you're in, like it might have some more protections than others. Nevada's another one like it too that has some protection, but not all. But another reason is too is that the thing I love best about this is that I can get this money to pay me in two places in the same time. Because I can have the money inside the insurance policy, but then I can also get a line of credit from the insurance company that's private, doesn't show up on my credit report. You don't have to, you can pay it back however, whenever you want. The balloon payments due is at your death,
right?
Which they just use your death benefit to pay back the loan, then pay the rest of your family tax-free, right?
Yep.
So it's kind of like this Roth IRA in a sense, because it grows tax-free, comes out tax-free. But again, I can have the money in there, get this line of credit against it because they use the collateral in that cash savings account, use that as collateral to go invest wherever I want. It doesn't tell me what I can or can't do with that money. And I don't have the monthly payments. So it's kind of like having a HELOC, but the HELOC that actually pays me interest and doesn't require monthly payments. And so I love to use it for that specifically where I can now make money in two places at the same time because I'm still earning interest over here because I didn't pull my money out. And even though I'm paying them interest, if I'm using the cash flow and returns to pay back towards it, I pay them less interest than what they pay me. And as a result, I make money there and I make money in my investments anyways, which means I actually double up. So if I were to make, say, just 10% on a real estate deal, that can usually help me make at least 11 or 12% instead of just 10%. So I can always add at least a few percent more using this strategy versus using my savings account.
Well, and you said the word HELOC in a comparison, and this is the HELOC that doesn't jeopardize your personal home and doesn't get called due for any reason. And
no reason at all.
That is actually one of my pet peeves is all these people on these platforms talking about how brilliant they are using HELOCs to invest in real estate. And after going through the downturn of 07 and getting my ass kicked, and I didn't lose my personal family home, but it was close. And I had a HELOC out there to try and cover bad debts and blah, 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 right? Like, it makes me cringe when people, not that I have anything against them actually using it, if they use it correctly and they know the risks and they use their heads. But when you see these brand new investors going out there saying, yeah, I've got hundreds of thousands of dollars of equity in my home and I've never done a deal in my life, but I'm going to go jeopardize my family home and take out a HELOC. It just pisses me off. I'll be honest.
That's true. Like, because we're talking about like infinite banking with the life insurance, but then you have this velocity banking concept using a HELOC, right? Same kind of strategy.
Right.
And I was warning people years ago. I was like, here's the problem. And you probably remember this too. In the last recession, banks were cutting back lines of credit left and right.
Wow.
Even if you had an open HELOC, they would cut it back. So when I started hearing certain companies specifically saying like their whole strategy was only that one strategy to create wealth, I was like, this company is going to go under if they're not careful, because that one strategy, if anything changes, interest rates rise, which they did, and or they start calling notes due, which still hasn't happened yet, but could easily happen if we move into a deeper recession. That strategy is screwed up. I mean, imagine if you like ran up this big bill and then you start using all your cash flow, all the returns from your real estate, putting it back into your house, to then the plan is eventually charge it back again. But then also the bank tells you the week after they did it, right? So that you have no time to react. They say, oh, last week we cut off your line of credit. It's now where the balance you just paid it down to. So say you had a $500,000 home equity line of credit, you paid it down to $100,000. You're just about getting ready to invest some more because you start to see that there's some opportunity in this kind of downturn. And then what happens? Now you can't get to any of that money. That $400,000 you paid in is trapped. And when that happened to me in the last recession with even just a normal mortgage, right? I couldn't get my equity out. I tried to short sell my property. They wouldn't even accept a short sale because eventually all the equity was gone when the market tanked.
Yep.
Then I couldn't even short sell it because Lehman Brothers owned my note, which means I got a $300 settlement for mortgage fraud from them. Thanks for that. But I mean, I had foreclosed on that house. I mean, it cost me way more than $300 that I got back. But I had to foreclose on that house because there was no equity. There was no options anymore. They wouldn't take short sale agreements. And so I would have been better off in the last recession, not paying off my house. So yeah, I agree. Like you got to be careful of that strategy and definitely don't use it to gamble. If you're going to use it, put in something that's more guaranteed. Even if it's just, I take the equity from one property, put it into another property that I know will hold the value, right? It's not speculative. It's not like a spec home necessarily,
right?
But it's something that we're going to hold the value that maybe is a value add play or something like that. Great. Use it for that. But again, you got to make sure that the cash flow services the debt. Otherwise, if you don't have a good enough cash flow and profit going on, you're going to be screwed.
100%. 100%. Chris, let me ask you this question I ask everybody. What's one thing that I should be asking you that I haven't?
Man, we have had so much fun talking already. I mean, I would just say this, is that I'm going to reiterate the same thing. And maybe it's not a question, it's just a statement, is that, again, like when you're in the real estate business, do not just focus on trying to make more money and always just reinvest in your business. I know a guy out there teaches profit first called Mike Michalowicz. He wrote that book. He would say all the time, he's like, and I remember him saying this in 2019 before everything started getting crazy. He said, listen, if you're always reinvesting money in your business, you are not profitable because you're just spending money. So your profits are zero if you're always putting money back in the business. He's like, get that money out, pull it out in profits, keep that money, and then figure out what to do from there. And I wholeheartedly agree, is that although I do believe that your business is number one, the best investment to invest into, do not think that, especially after this first, the first launching of your business, right? Yeah, you're going to put a lot more of your money in, but once you start to get to a point you start to make some decent money in that business, start to pay yourself profits to then diversify away from it. One of my friends, Rob, for example, he was doing deals left and right. He was doing like, triple digit type deals every year, transactions every year, right? I mean, he was doing a lot of business. And I remember like in 2019, I was telling him about like one of my clients is going to make 20,000 a month passively. He's like, how do I do that? I told him, I was like, well, easy. Like instead of just taking all the properties you're using as transactions, maybe hold on to some of them. Right. And so he started to do that. When 2022 and 2023 hit, I mean, we saw a lot of guys suffering. He was one of the few guys that had a smile on his face because he's like, yeah, I've got now over 20,000, 25,000 a month of passive income coming in. Even if the rest of my business fails, this is still paying the bills. Right. That's why you got to do that. I know it's not easy from day one if you're just starting out, but once you start to get into a little bit of a mature phase in your business, you start to get your legs under you, you start to get a little bit, pull a little bit out, even if it's just a little bit of time, 1% of your profit, even just start pulling that money out and get it away to then generate multiple streams of income so that if something like this were to happen to you, you can actually still be safe. You can keep a level head. You can make good decisions, and you will be the one person, just like you did, Derek. I mean, you actually survived multiple storms, right? You've made it through multiple, really a cycle and a half or almost 2 cycles now. You've made it through this because of that very reason. And so I just reiterate that as that if you want to be a wise investor, it's about how you can stay in it for the long game. And that's getting multiple streams of passive income.
100%. And I attest, the last 6 or 7 years of my success to finally building a network. And, the first half of my career, I was a closet investor. I didn't have people to turn to. Now, I know that you've belonged to multiple mastermind groups. I belong to some. I host the REI Circle of Trust. The question is, how long have you been involved in networking or mastermind groups? And what's the difference before you were a part of that versus now?
Yeah, it's funny you asked that. I just was thinking about that on a run this morning, because, like I started really getting into mastermind groups about 2017, 2018, and I'll tell you, like in my business, I was kind of like a one-man show, and I made easily $250,000 to $500,000 a year just doing that. But there is something about if you're in the right mastermind groups, I know that every time I go, I'm about to go to 2 of them this next month, right? Every time I go, I come back a little bit stronger. I come back wanting to be a better husband, a better father. I come back wanting to be a better leader and business owner too. And not to mention, I mean, the wealth of knowledge that you get from a room. I used to, before that, always hire coaches, like one-on-one coaches, and I still do here or there. But it's almost like when you're in a mastermind group, you have multiple coaches you can work with depending on what situation or problem you have. And they're peers too. So like you can kind of say, hey, I'm dealing with this. And they're like, yeah, me too. Here's what I'm doing. And even outside your industry, you can get ideas from outside the real estate industry sometimes, depending on the mastermind group, where you can say, that's pretty creative. What if I apply that to my industry? And I'll tell you that, that has made me literally millions and millions of dollars just by being in those right things. And I know you've got a mastermind group as well. It's when you face to face, it's not just like a Zoom or group coaching thing. It's like literally when you're with other people and you're able to have intimate conversations, or even just, conversations that be able to pick people's brains and even get to know them better. That network can just pay you dividends above and beyond anything.
100%. And for us, I do mine a little different. We rent a house. We all stay together at each retreat for 5 to 6 days typically. And so you're immersed 24/7. Like nobody can escape, right? You have your own bedroom, but you're together all the time. And what I have learned in the last 7 years, being a part of other mastermind groups, hosting my own for the last 6 years, is you can prejudge anybody you want. You can put them on a pedestal, or you can put them in the gutter. We all have very, very similar challenges, regardless of income level, regardless of experience in, business. To a certain degree, we are all a show. And
that's right.
When you're in the right group, and you said these words, when you're in the right mastermind group, that can come out. However, if you're in the wrong group with the wrong incentives there, like you may be told what your vision and your goals should be instead of them asking you what your vision and your goals are. But when you're in the right group, it's night and day difference. So
that's true.
I know when 2020 hit, many, many people in March of 2020 were panicking. My network, and I'm assuming your network as well, we were all collaborating. And for the majority of us, 2020 was the best year we'd had to date, up to
Yeah.
that date in business, because we were helping each other. So.
Yeah, I like how you do with your masterminds, because it could be intimate enough that it could be in one place. The one thing I see wrong with some mastermind groups now, they get so big, it gets so impersonal that you really just don't get that real connection, right?
Yeah.
And you really don't get that look into people's lives, realizing, oh, you're just as screwed up as I am. Like,
Yep.
you're just playing at a different level, but you've got your own problems, and I might even be able to help with it, even though I might consider myself less than or whatever it might be, right? I used to be so intimidated in those groups. Now I just realize we're all just part of the human club. We're all in this together that way. Although I hate using that phrase now after 2020, but it's true. Like we're all here just trying to figure things out, and we all deal with our own struggles and challenges. But man, like when you can really take advantage of a group like that and really truly mastermind with people, like really get vulnerable and open,
Yeah.
not be around a bunch of chest thumpers, right? But when you're in a real authentic, vulnerable group, it's amazing what kind of shifts can happen in your life as well as in theirs.
Absolutely. And quite honestly, that's where our tagline at Generations of Wealth came from. Live your vision, love your life. It's,
Yeah.
Our groups, there's no more than 20 people there, and we're all together. And it's not just business, it's business, life, health, relationships, all of that is so commingled. And it's really cool. And I know some of the groups that you're a part of. And I know a lot of the people that are in the groups you're a part of. And when you're around those quality, ethical people, that makes all the difference as well. So,
yeah. If I were to give one warning in those groups, if you ever join, like, especially the bigger groups, Pace Morby and I were talking about this on our show. He's talking about, like, every time he went to a mastermind group, he came back thinking, oh, I'm going to do 100 doors. Oh, I should do 1,000 doors, And we started having that discussion on my show. And he just said, you know what? I'm just realizing, Chris, after hearing your intro, man, I need to check myself. He's like, I've been trying to chase after doors, having thousands of doors. And for what? He's like, I could be happy with 50 properties, 50 doors, make good money, and have time with my family and just have the simple things in life. He's like, I get in front of those other groups sometimes. He's like, I get in front of those people, and then I just think, oh, I just got to do more. And you're always chasing, but never attaining, So just as a warning, like when you're with those groups, and I'm sure your group is kind of like this too. You're like, you get real. You're not just trying to thump your chest about how awesome you are. You start to realize it's not about the number of doors like so many people try to sell you on. It's really about what kind of life can you create with it.
That's exactly what our vision is all about. Like we work with our clients or people in our group to figure out what you want for your personal life first, and then build a business that will support that personal life, but not consume it. And so I was challenged a few years ago by a mentor of mine because I was envious. He took a 30-day RV trip. And so he challenged me. He said, is it in your vision? So the following year, I took a 5-week RV trip with my family. And now for the last 3 summers, I've done a 5 to 6 week trip where I literally work, if I do, 2 hours a day. And very few people can say that,
So true.
But Chris, man, I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed this conversation. We could probably keep this going for another hour, but I think we're going to wind it down. Tell us, how can people find you? Tell us, can they find you on social medias, websites, stalk you, peek through your windows? Like, what's the deal?
Well, other than the peeking through the windows, I might hesitate on that one a little bit, but you can definitely follow us and stalk us. Everything's at Money Ripples on social media. We have the Money Ripples podcast, and even our website's moneyripples.com. So just find Money Ripples.
Fantastic. Well, I look forward to us actually crossing paths where we can shake hands in person. But it's been a real honor having you on the show today. And
same here.
I really, really do appreciate it. To everybody listening, thanks for joining Generations of Wealth. Go out, live your vision, love your life. See you on the next one.
Thank you for joining us on another insightful episode of Generations of Wealth. May your newfound knowledge help you in leveling up your own strategies to get through the many obstacles to your money-making processes and bring you much closer to the financially secure life you truly deserve. Continue filling up your accounts and further polish your financial tactics by listening to more episodes of the podcast at thegenerationsofwealth.com. Because in your wealth building journey, there is no other way to go but up, giving you the chance to finally live your vision, love your life. That's all for now. See you on the next one.